Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Monday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. We're here on Giants.com for the next hour to talk Giants football with you at 201-939-4513. Paul Dottino, Matt Citak. And folks, let's not kid ourselves, right? We knew going in the shorthanded, injury-plagued Giants were going up against a Baltimore Ravens team that views itself as a championship contender. Although they've had a few stumbles along the season, they're coming off a bye week and a loss in their previous game to Philly. I think we all kind of knew going in that the Ravens were going to be sharpening their swords and they were going to try to get back on point because with a month left in the regular season, they want to solidify a wild card spot, thinking that probably Pittsburgh is going to win their division. At least I think so.
Well, got obviously a little bit closer yesterday.
It did. But coming in, you got to give Pittsburgh the edge.
For sure, but I think Baltimore kind of looked at it as, you know, we're going into this game where we're huge road favorites while the Steelers have to play the Eagles. And then guess what? Those two teams play each other this upcoming weekend. So
yeah,
I think
they do.
They kind of looked at it as take care of business today.
Try to close the gap.
And then if we win Saturday, all of a sudden, division's tied.
In any event, maybe they did. Maybe they did.
Regardless.
I'm a Steelers guy all the way. So I'm a little prejudiced here.
That's fair.
I think the Steelers are going to win that division, and I want the Steelers to win that division.
I will say Saturday should be a very entertaining game.
Yeah, for sure.
Between those two teams.
For sure. Point being, the Ravens want to get back on the horse, get their wheels spinning with a lot of grease and a lot of oil, and go rocking into the postseason, and they think that they're a championship contender.
Yes.
Okay. The way they played yesterday, who without them? They played a terrific game yesterday. That quarterback, Lamar Jackson, played about as well as he could possibly imagine. And the depleted Giants did what they could, but they simply did not have enough fuel for the fire. And they got beat 34-14. Folks, that's why, to be frank with you, when we took calls on the postgame show after the game at MetLife Stadium yesterday, John, myself, and Jonathan Casillas, it's like, let's not get all emotional about this because we understood. It's like going up to the plate with a toothpick and trying to face Roger Clemens. Okay, chances are you're not going to do too well against his fastball. Well, the Ravens threw their fastball yesterday, and the Giants just did not have enough ammunition to fight back. They did what they could, and it just wasn't to be. So, with that being said, our number is 201-939-4513. We'll get to your calls in just a second. I did want to throw out a couple of things, though, to you, Matt, because I think, and I know you guys are probably not going to want to talk about some of the better things that were shown yesterday, but there were actually a couple of good things. Malik Neighbors adjusted to a touchdown pass from Tim Boyle, which is the kind of play that he needs to make on a routine basis as he's moved forward in his career. That was admirable, how he was in there in the fourth quarter. Giants are getting hammered, and yet he's out there on a bad hip, and he made a really great adjustment to come back on an underthrown ball. Boyle was pressured, let it go, and he found the ball, did Neighbors in the corner of the end zone for the touchdown. That's a play he's got to make every week. If he could do that on a routine basis, the Giants are going to be real happy.
Yeah. No, definitely. Well, this was, his yards per catch. He had 10 receptions for 82 yards. So the yards per reception, maybe a little bit lower than
but he drew two pass interference passes downfield, which were big too.
That's true. But I just say that. But point being, this was a game that felt like has been brewing for a while from Malik. The double-digit receptions, we haven't seen that since earlier in the year. Found the end zone for the first time since the first month of the season.
The Cleveland game.
Yeah, he made the touchdown catch was great, and then the sideline catch he made, I believe from Boyle, it was about 15, 16-yard gain where he got both feet in right at the edge of the sideline. Another great catch. So this was the Malik Neighbors that we were seeing at the beginning part of the year.
We saw it in the fourth quarter, too, against New Orleans.
Yes, but, to see him kind of do it for a whole game, and it kind of, what's only even more impressive is that this is the fourth quarterback he's now caught passes from this year. And, despite that lack of continuity at the most important position, Malik Neighbors keeps doing Malik Neighbors things. And he's kind of showing that it doesn't really matter too much who's throwing him the ball. He's still going to be capable of making plays and helping, generate some offense.
Did you catch up to him and Boyle after the game? Were you there outside their lockers?
Yeah.
When both of them said they had not thrown a pass to each other all week?
Yeah, and Malik was very complimentary about Boyle
Yeah.
in the locker room after the game. So yeah, that was definitely one of the more encouraging things from the game. As you mentioned, we don't want to highlight too many positives because at the end of the day, the Giants are 2-12. And,
No, there are just a couple of things though that I don't want them to go unannounced because it's just foolish to ignore some of the underlying factors that may be building in a positive direction, and Neighbors is one of them.
Yeah, no, he 100%, and I do think it is. Some of these guys deserve a little bit of praise for kind of stepping up in a way.
Yesterday, I got a guy on defense. Give me one.
I've got two guys.
Okay.
So
I one for sure, but if you have two, that's okay.
I'm gonna say one, and hopefully it's not the same one that you have.
Okay.
This guy has been playing great all season, Micah McFadden.
Yes, absolutely.
He has
back-to-back games. He's been terrific.
Terrific, and I spoke last week about how the Saints want to run the ball, and shutting down Kamara has to be priority number one. And the Giants did last week a great job shutting down Alvin Kamara. This past week, I said the same thing about the Ravens. I said, if the Saints' priority number one is running the football, then for the Ravens, it's priorities 1, 2, and 3. And Lamar Jackson, he did damage on the ground for sure. He averaged over 10 yards per carry on his 6 rush attempts. It's tough slowing down a mobile quarterback, the dual threat quarterback, one that's an MVP candidate, a 2-time MVP winner already. It's tough to slow him down when he tucks the ball and runs with it. But generally speaking, and I know if you just look at the yards per carry, Derrick Henry had a decent game. But if you told me going into the game that they would hold Derrick Henry to 67 yards, I would sign up for that in a heartbeat.
What do you have, about 30 yards in the first half?
I think around that.
Give or take a few. He was not really a factor.
He wasn't. He had a long run of 13 yards, but other than that, he was picking up just a couple of yards per play, which, again, going into the game, I think all of us would have signed up for 67 yards from Derrick Henry. Now, just on the flip side to that is that the Giants, I mean, it's not an excuse, but the Giants have been decimated with injuries, and going into yesterday's game, being down your number 1 corner, your number 2 corner, and your 3 starting corners in Deonte Banks, Cordell Flott, and Drew Phillips. Well, the Ravens clearly were like, all right, even if you're able to slow down our run game a little bit, Lamar is just going to throw it. And
5 touchdown passes.
He had one of his best games as an quarterback.
Ever.
As a passer. We've seen him do more damage on the ground, but nearly 300 yards, 5 touchdowns. He had almost perfect passer rating. Lamar was unbelievable yesterday.
The Giants had, I remember early in the third quarter, I'm sitting next to Jonathan Casillas. We sit together in the box. And I said to him, do you see what's out there right now? And this is basically the way it's been now for almost 2 weeks. Lamar's out there trying to run the offense, and the Giants have 4 starters on the field. Thibodeau, Burns, McFadden, and Pinnock. That's it.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough out
That's
there.
rough. So, you got to understand, you can't eat soup with a fork. I know the chunky people want to say you can, but you really can't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stuff.
With all due respect to Dexter Lawrence, and I don't mind saying the name in there because they do. Again, Dexter Lawrence has a big sponsorship with them, so I think we're good. You don't have to call John on me. And then the other guy. Well, you had another guy on defense you wanted to highlight.
Yeah, if you want to talk.
No. Because I was going to highlight somebody on offense, but you want to go defensive guy.
Yeah. So then the other defensive player, I thought, Dane Belton, who had a game high 15 total tackles. Tyler Newman obviously just got placed on injured reserve. This was the first game he's missed. First game that Belton has had an opportunity to not only start but get extended playing time because it's been Newman and Pinnock with getting most of the snaps at safety. And Belton had a pretty good game. I mean, obviously it would have been a little bit better if he was able to come down with that interception instead of just breaking up that deep pass.
He was a little late getting over on the 1 touchdown catch too.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a perfect game by any means.
He was very active and he made a lot of tackles, but there was some blemishes on his game.
Yeah,
too.
That's why I didn't want to lead with him because it was not a perfect game.
Fair enough.
But I just thought his first chance to really get an extended look all season I thought he put together overall just a pretty good game.
Okay, fair enough.
A bit of a pat on the back to him.
Very active.
Stayed ready
tackles.
all season.
Very active.
Yeah.
And I'm a Belton fan.
Yeah.
So, but
no, it wasn't.
I know there are
perfect,
plays he's going to want back.
100%.
All right. Evan Neal played well yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay? Folks, I'm getting tired of having to wake you folks up and tell you about Evan Neal playing well because people are sleeping on him. He continues to pave that road on the way to being the guy he is supposed to be. I was pleased with him.
Yeah, the Giants dropped back 50 times yesterday, which that's a lot of dropbacks. Evan Neal got credited with allowing one pressure all game. And on a similar note, similar kudos to Jermaine Illuminor and Greg Van Roden. Illuminor did not give up a single pressure. Van Roden gave up one, which it was a sack, but 1 out of 50. So those three really put together pretty solid performances. But honestly, between Illuminor and Van Roden, these are veterans that have been around the league forever. And not that we expect them to have perfect games or great games every single time they go out there, but I would say Evan Neal having the performance he had against that front of Baltimore's a little more impressive in my eyes. It's important because we haven't seen him do it as much.
It's important because Neal had been tossed aside by so many people outside the building, and he finally gets a chance to play, and now he's put together a month that I feel is a really solid foundation for him moving forward. He still has 3 more games to go. And Lord knows, you know what? Anything could happen in the next 3 games. He could get hurt. He might all of a sudden play poorly, but I don't think so. Because what I'm seeing is the arrow is going up on him. He has had 1 game against Dallas, which was kind of not as good. The other 4 games were good. He's playing well, and he is on his way to rebuilding his career. And if he continues to play well over the next 3 games, the Giants are going to be very happy with him going into the offseason. I'll tell you that right now.
And that one game that he did kind of struggle in the Dallas game, Micah Parsons and Overshone as well. Like,
yeah.
That's a very top tier,
no shame in that,
edge rushing duo. Yeah, I mean, look, going all the way back to when the Giants were in the bye or coming out of the bye, we spoke about how one of the most important parts of this final 7-8 games of the season was to see what Evan Neal could do.
Yeah.
See if, all that time spent on the bench this year, if he was, learning, growing, developing behind the scenes. And it sure looks like he has. I mean, compared to what we saw from him on the field the last 2 seasons, he looks a lot better out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not perfect, as you said.
Nope,
he still has more growing, more developing to do. But since the bye, I guess the first game was the Panthers game right before the bye. But since he stepped onto the field this season, you got to be at least a little encouraged by what we've seen from Evan Neal.
Well, think about how little work he had during the spring and the summer and the training camp and the preseason. Think about how little he was able to do because of the ankle surgery. So now he's actually getting a chance to get on the field, okay, and actually put some of Carmen Bracillo's teaching to use. That's why, I'm sorry, folks, I'm very excited about what I'm seeing out of him right now. That is one of the silver linings of the second part of this season, is the resurgence of Evan Neal.
He still ends up on the ground a little too often. That I think
it's
anyone
a work in
would prefer.
Progress. But it's a work in progress.
He's definitely shown,
but he's on the right track.
He's definitely shown some encouragement.
I got one more guy I want to throw out. Special teams. Jamie Gillen.
He's been great all season.
I'll tell you what.
All year he's been great.
He dropped 2 punts inside the 10 yesterday. Had 5 inside the red zone, inside the 20 out of his 8 punts. 2 of them were inside the 10. Jamie Gillen's now put together 2 back-to-back seasons where he is getting much, much better at tilting the field and strategically placing his kicks. I thought he had his best year last season, and this season, you're absolutely right. He has done a nice job this season, and I thought yesterday he was very good.
He was great in that Saints game, too.
There you go, Pearson. Go ahead. Get your mic back up.
Well, I just saw him drop in once inside the 10. Inside the 10.
Anytime we got something good to say, by all means, raise the volume,
and it just
baby.
pops right outside out the sideline, which is perfect.
Yeah, look, I know people don't want to talk about punters too often, but they're obviously an important piece to
what would the Giants have done without
team?
Steve Weatherford in the second Super Bowl game against the Patriots if he didn't drop all those kicks inside the 10-yard line? Don't tell me a punter's not important.
No, of course they're important, but I'm saying I feel like people don't appreciate them unless you're a punter on a good team.
Oh, okay. There you go. I got you.
But yeah, I mean, Jamie Gillen, I said that, I want to say I was talking about this maybe a month or two ago, and I got a little bit of flack from a caller or two, but he really has just been very solid all season, and especially with pinning the opponents inside their 20. I mean, he's tied for 5th highest percentage of kicks down inside the 20 in the NFL.
Well, 5 out of 8 yesterday.
He's really doing a good job, and again,
3 of them were fair catches.
I understand not getting too excited about a punter being, a potential standout in a season where your team's 2-12, but nonetheless, guys that have been playing well deserve at least a little bit of credit.
That's my point. It's easy to get lost in the smoke because things are just really murky right now. The team is 2-12. They've lost 9 in a row. We understand all of that. But that's why, in other places, you're just going to see people to continue to throw matches into the fire. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell you as an X's and O's guy, and that's why I'm glad you're joining me on this one. As an X's and O's guy, there are some things that are underlying the smoke that are actually doing well. And as you look toward the 2025 season, you want to take some of those things that are doing well and you want to be saying, all right, let's start thinking about some of that stuff going into the offseason. I just don't want those guys to be ignored. That's all.
And I don't want anyone to think that like us talking about some players that have been, playing well at least yesterday or in recent weeks, that doesn't mean that anyone is, happy or okay with how the season has gone.
Not in the least.
Not even in the tiniest little bit. But, heading into next year, it's not like the entire roster, all 90 players going into training camp are going to be new. There will be a lot of, or at least some players back from this year. And especially with how young this team is, there will be a lot of building blocks from this year, part of next year's team. And those guys are going to be important to the future. So it's I agree with you. It's still important, at least to spend a little bit of time highlighting the guys that have played well and are potentially earning themselves spots on next year's team.
There's been plenty of time to bellyache about some of the negatives. We've had 2 months to do that. All right, so if we can find some positives, how about just throwing a little bit of a change up out there and trying to at least talk about them for a change and recognize some of the positives. Yep. You got to do me a favor while we're doing this. Monitor, see Brian Dable's going to be talking any minute now, or maybe he already has. To get injury updates. We know that Tommy DeVito left the game near the end of the first half yesterday with a concussion. And I don't know, does Brian have an update on him yet?
So Dan Salamone from Giants.com tweeted, Brian Dable said that Tommy DeVito is in the concussion protocol. We'll see where he's at, is the exact quote. They will also evaluate Drew Lock, who's dealing with both heel and left elbow, so his non-throwing arm elbow injuries. So they'll evaluate Drew Lock before making a decision for this week's game in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And Dable also thought that Tim Boyle made some nice throws, was decisive, and he made the most of his opportunity.
All right. So keep an eye on that in case something else comes up on anyone else. 201-939-4513 is our phone number. We go to line 1. Rich in Virginia, you're first on the program. Hello.
Good afternoon, Godfather and Matt.
Hi, Rich.
Hey, Rich.
Merry Christmas.
You too.
I will try to, I'm a very positive person. You remember, I go back, I've seen every game since 1961. But
I know you have.
Flashback, Paul, do you remember your conversation with Coach Marvin, who I love, Friday?
Yes,
I do.
You
were talking about talent. Bottom line, I'm Air Force got you. The bottom line up front.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, you're welcome. 41 years.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah. So, bottom line to this whole discussion.
Do you have any opinion about these drones, by the way?
I worked with, we're digressing here, but my last
I know,
job,
Rich, but I got to know, because these things are like all over the place. They're like mosquitoes these days. They're flying around like crazy.
One word. Yeah, I know. Exactly. Nefarious. Something's going on there.
Okay.
And especially it's been going on they've had them down here near Langley Air Force Base where we live, and there's something going on there. It's they could be doing what's called ISR, intel surveillance and reconnaissance, but they've been going on for several months, and something's going on here. I don't know what. I'm retired now, so anyway. Okay, so you got to hear me out here, please.
Appreciate it. Go ahead.
So you and Coach Marvin, love you guys. You know that to death. I got to qualify and throw my 2 cents in on what he said. The Giants, he said, have good players. I want to say the Giants have some good players. If the Giants had more good players, they wouldn't be 2-12 and would only won 8 games in the last 10 years. The problem is personnel, especially in the draft. Everyone can see that. Now, hear me out. There's 3 givens when you talk about the draft, and I think you guys will agree. Number 1 given, you build the team through the draft because of the rookie contracts and the salary cap, vis-a-vis the free agencies where you plug in, you fill your holes.
Yeah.
Number 2 given, draft is a crapshoot.
Yeah.
It's you're dealing with young men, 21, 22 years old, who are trying to go from the minor leagues to the major leagues, and it's a big jump. A lot of these young guys don't make it. We know that, and it's an indefinite science because you're dealing with young human beings. Number 3 given, every year, and you guys talked about this, and we know, and you got to agree with this. The draft every year has different quality. Some years have a strong quarterback class, some years have a strong lineman class, whatever. So put that in the metric of trying to do this job, which is very, very difficult. So since we've had new leadership here in the last 3 years, Brandon Brown and Joe and Middleton, I think, player personnel guys, they've had 24 draft picks. The responsibility for building the team is those guys, those 3 guys. 2022 draft, we had 11 draft picks. I'll just go over the first 3 in each of these last 3 years. We had Neal, Tibbs, Wandell, Azudu, and Flott in those rounds 1, 2, and 3. I do agree with you. The needle is pointing up on Evan Neal. However, the body of work for 3 years is still shaky. Tibbs, for his position in the draft, has been average. Wandell has been a contributor. The other guys I say are solid picks. Bellinger in the 4th round and McFadden, who I really like. It was in the 5th round. 2023, we had 7 picks. Frankly, this draft I think was poor. These guys have been disappointing. Banks in the 1st round, we traded up to get him. JMS round 2 and Hyatt, we traded up to get him in the 3rd round. They have been disappointing. Last year, 2024, without a doubt, had 6 draft picks. He hit on all these guys. Neighbors, obviously, and I got a lot of respect for this kid. That kid is playing hurt and played his guts out yesterday.
Yeah,
tremendous. TT, Tracy, he hit a home run on that kid. The other guys, Newman, Drew Phillips, Theo was on IR, and Musso. Neil is pointing up on them. But the body of work, guys, it's just not there. Joe is a smart guy. He really is.
Rich, I think before you go any further, first of all, your points.
He hasn't delivered.
Yeah, but Rich, first of all, you're 3 for 3 on your boxes earlier. I think we would all agree. The 3 points you made at the beginning, check. Nobody's going to argue with any of those philosophies or the logic you presented. However, as you just went over these 3 drafts, but that's the whole point. You can't grade the drafts until after 3 years are in the books. So the last 2 classes are still works in progress. So I appreciate your angst and you wanted to see instantly add water and come up with a Pro Bowl player, but that's not the way it works in this league. Okay? And Matt and I were just on the show, was it Friday?
Yep.
And you went over how many Pro Bowl guys were taken in the first 3 rounds in the last couple of drafts, and there's not been a ton. So I think, you want to be disappointed, fine. We'll let you be disappointed. But I don't think you're being realistic in your disappointment. And then the other thing I think you have to keep in mind as well is that there have been a number of injuries to those guys who are not only young developing players, but they've also been set back where not only did they lose time on the field that hurt their production, but that also hurt their development. So You know, Rich, you gotta grade this more on a logical curve, to be frank with you, and I think you know better than that.
Well, I know that, Paul, but you've got to also injuries. I understand it, but you got to discount that. It's not an excuse. Brian, every coach is going to say that. Look at what happened in Buffalo yesterday.
I get that, which is why your early point about not enough good players is valid.
The reason Buffalo won that game because they got a great quarterback and they got really good players on offense. They outscored them. But if you look at 2022, these kids that were drafted have had 3 years to develop. And the biggest jump has got to be between year 1 and 2. And I just don't see it. And number two point,
Tibbs went from like 4 sacks to 11. I mean, he almost tripled. Thibodeau almost tripled his sack total from year 1 to year 2, and now he's been hurt in year 3. And I agree with you; he's been underwhelming this year. But if you want to throw a guy out who had 11.5 sacks last year, I'll be honest with you, Rich. I got to disagree.
Well, I got to disagree there too on impacts. The last time I remember Tibbs making an impact was when he was a rookie, and he knocked that ball out of Lamar Jackson's hand in the fourth quarter.
What about the play in Washington?
Yeah, okay, that's right. Okay, but we were looking at impact players. Second point I want to make about, I understand what you're saying about all-pro. You don't need, 11 all-pros in a solid draft. The meat and potatoes in the solid draft is in the later rounds, but they haven't made an impact. And you look at the 2022 draft, Davidson, McKeithen, and Beavers. Beavers is off the team. Yeah, had the knee injury. McKeithen, Joe, he missed on McKeithen. And let's face it, he missed on Azudu. He really did. So looking at positives, those kids I told you, I think are players. I agree with Coach, but I say Giants have a small group of really good players. Number two, good point. Let's talk about positives. They're a really young team. But every year, which is frustrating that, out of me for years, is this injury bug. I mean,
I know, Rich.
19 guys? 19 guys
it's brutal.
The injury. That is so frustrating.
And it's happened multiple years. I know. Trust me. Nobody wants these guys to get hurt. Believe me. Again, the injuries not only... We're going to let you go at that point, Rich, because I got to get other guys on the phone. But, Rich, listen. Here's the thing. Injuries not only hurt production, but they hurt development. It's a double-edged sword. You get zapped twice when a young guy gets hurt. That's why it's such a setback. It's not like when a veteran gets hurt. Guy's in the league 7 years. He gets hurt. You lose his production. But you're not losing development time. That's a big deal. Evan Neal is a great example of this. The development time that he had lost during his injuries. Azudu the same way. You can't even quantify how much a guy gets set back when he's young and loses time on the field.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I have to say, I disagree with a few things that Rich was saying. For starters, the one thing that everyone seems to be on the same page about, this front office is that they hit a home run with this year's draft class. And I know he mentioned Malik and Tyrone, who've both been great, but he kind of was a little wishy-washy on the other guys. Tyler Nubin, prior to this past week, when obviously he'd been placed on injured reserve, was the leading tackler among all rookies in the NFL. Number one. Well, but with a pretty decent sized margin as well. He would have, had he not gotten hurt, if he played these last 4 games, would have finished the season as the number 1 rookie tackler.
Before you finish, Nubin, Tracy, Neighbors will probably be on the All-NFL rookie team, will they not?
I would think so.
Yeah.
And Drew Phillips was
Theo Johnson might be too.
Drew Phillips was playing pretty great football before getting hurt. And he's dealt with, injuries beginning of the year that caused him to miss about a game and a half, came back and was playing out of his mind to the point where, I know you don't love mentioning of Pro Football Focus, but just they had him as one of the highest ranked, not only rookie corners, but corners, period, in the NFL prior to this injury a couple of weeks ago. So that's another rookie that I think deserves way more praise than what Rich was just saying there. And then Theo Johnson, while he wasn't, blowing up the box score every week, he had been trending very much in the right direction. His last 5 games before getting hurt, he was showing that he is clearly a pretty big part of the offense. He was getting targets, catching the ball, not dropping. I mean, he had a couple of drops throughout the season, but it was getting better in that department in recent weeks prior to this foot injury, to a point where I think he was number 3 among all rookie tight ends.
Actually,
obviously Brock Bowers is among the rookie receiving
Bowers is going to be the old rookie tight end.
But I believe
Theo was number 2 on
he was
almost every
number
other
2 or 3 in every other category in terms of rookie tight ends.
Yep.
Muasau is the only one where it's just he hasn't gotten a ton of playing time this year. If you want to say with Darius,
day 3 draft pick,
that was going to be my other point. We're talking about these guys as if, all of these picks are expected to be home run picks. That's just clearly not the case. You look at any team's draft, most of the time you don't hit every pick. This year, it looks like at least the first 5 picks could be very strong hits. Now, I'm not saying that should just count for everything and that you can't look at the previous 2 drafts. Obviously, that's not the case. But as I mentioned on Friday, and don't have to go through every one again from the 2022 draft to the 2023 draft, but please look at who got drafted after the Giants picks and tell me who the Giants should have pivoted to in terms of what their team needs were, and not drafting at positions where they already had a surplus of players. Tell me where the Giants should have gone that would have been better, because these 2 drafts, the 2022 and 2023, as overall draft classes, just don't look like they are going to go down as very strong draft classes, which happens sometimes. So I understand frustration with wanting these draft picks to be showing more. I think everyone obviously would love to see that, but it's not like the other options are, blowing the Giants draft picks out of the water. All these guys from these classes, save for obviously some exceptions, but as an overall draft class, the 2022 and 2023 draft classes have just not played that well so far. It's still early in all their careers, obviously, but the early results as the draft class in total have just not been very strong.
I don't want to put words in Coach Marvin's mouth, because he's, like I said, he's our most intelligent caller. He's had decades and decades of football experience and coaching experience. But I think, Rich, what Coach Marvin and I agreed to the other day, and you were on the show, I thought. I think you were on that show. We agreed that the Giants have had a collection of good players over the last 3 years in the draft, but what they're missing are all pros. They haven't drafted a superstar or an all-pro in the last 3 years. That's what they're missing. Yep. That's what we agreed to agree on. So, Rich, I don't know if you want to jump on board with that and agree and make that a threesome. Well, actually a foursome, because Matt's on board with it too, right? So that's what it comes down to. They haven't drafted all pros. That's true. But the last 3 years, they've got a shopping cart full of useful players.
And you can't tell me that after what they've done this season that you have no confidence that any of the 2024 rookies could become all pros and not too far down the road. I mean, would it shock anyone if next year, if the Giants get a quarterback this offseason, or when they get a quarterback, if Malik Neighbors is in the all-pro conversation next year?
I'll go back to Nubin. He's ahead. He's ahead.
Drew Phillips is the slot corner. I mean,
but obviously Nubin's ahead of where McKinney was as a rookie, and he's ahead of where Landon Collins was as a rookie.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not saying I expect those guys to be all pros next year, but it wouldn't shock me if they, within the next year or two, were playing at least that level.
All right. 201-939-4513. Rob is in Yonkers. You're next on the program. Hello.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Hi.
Wow. I've been trying to call you guys for so long. I have a whole list of things here.
Uh-oh. Has it been since the Giants' last victory?
Wow.
No? Not that long?
No.
Okay.
Well, first off, I want to start off because I listen to a lot of ESPN, right? And, of course, I know you guys maybe watch as far as Greeny and Stephen A. Smith. And they're basically saying that Coach Dable and Joe Shane should be fired. I think otherwise. I like them two together. And I said you can't blame them if the quarterback overthrows or underthrows the ball. You can't blame them if Tracy fumbles the ball in the red zone. You can't blame them if we have an interception and it's our quarterback fault. I feel they call very good plays, but everyone's trying to put blame on the coaches and the GM. I don't think they should. And how many times do you want to keep firing coaches and GMs and like recycling coaches and GMs? So I actually think we should definitely keep them too and let them build this team. I have more to say, but what do you guys think about that?
Well, let's face it, okay? The climate today is a lot different than it was 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago. It used to be guys would come in, and Matt's a little before your time, but you'd get a 5-year plan. That's the way it was in this league, okay? And then all of a sudden, well, now maybe it kind of was a 4-year plan. Now it's almost like a 3-year plan if you're lucky, because the heat from the fans and the media doesn't allow teams to show the amount of patience that they want to show or that maybe they need to show. And that's kind of where we are in today's NFL. It seems like more often than not in today's game, guys get 3 years to put forth at least a winning record, if not a playoff team, or they're in trouble. Now, fortunately for this administration, they've already gotten a playoff season, which is one of the reasons why, if you favor keeping them, you're going to use that as one of the reasons why. If you're going to stack up, on the other side of the fence, you certainly have reasons when you look at the results why you're going to be dissatisfied. But there's also a list of reasons why, if you want to keep them, you can find them. And that's one of them. The fact that they did have a coach of the year just a couple of seasons ago and made the playoffs and won a road playoff game. So it's the climate of the league these days. There's a lot less patience.
Okay. Yeah. And a few more things. Number one, I'm one of the guys that met you in Fan Fest, Paul.
Yes, sir.
And I was the one. Yes, we took a picture together. I will tell you, it was an honor meeting you because you're like one of my favorites.
Oh, that was at the Garden at the celebration.
No.
Oh, at the stadium?
No, sorry. At the stadium.
At the stadium.
Yes, we had the drone lights and everything.
Oh, yeah. That was a spectacular show, wasn't it?
Yes. I was actually up by the office where John Mara and everybody was at.
I do remember. I wound up taking a bunch of pictures that day too. Thank you for your interest in what we do. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was the first person to take a picture. I saw my fans. I'm like, oh my God, there goes Paul. I was like, just know that I'm one of your fans. I'm definitely.
Well, thanks for not throwing a tomato, or if you did, thanks for not being accurate.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Did you guys see the plane yesterday at Giant Stadium?
Well, we're aware of it, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I seen it this morning. I'm like, that was terrible. All right, so one more thing. Number 88, or two more things. Number 88 on special teams. I don't understand why our players
Bryce
do not
Ford
wrap
Wheaton.
up. Yes. Instead of on the kickoff return, instead of him wrapping up, he just bumped into him. I'm like, dude, why are you not wrapping up?
He got blocked. Did you watch the play?
This is the long kickoff.
The kickoff return to start the game. Did you watch it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course.
Okay. The return guy, I forget it was Still? Who was it? Who was the return guy? I forget who it was. Was it Hill? For the Ravens.
Was it Ali?
Who was it? Was it? Hold on a second. I want to check this out. It was it was Hill.
Okay.
It was Hill. Okay. Hill cut to the right side. Isaiah Simmons had the border to make sure that he didn't get to the sideline. So he had his lane. And then it was Bryce Ford Wheaton and, I got it written down here. It was Bryce Ford Wheaton and who else? Art Green were the two guys who were inside of Isaiah Simmons. And as they came down, there was a blocker on each guy. And both of the Ravens guys got a piece of each of the Giants. And that allowed Hill to split them. And it created a seam, and that was it. Once he got that seam, it was going to be a big return. So I don't know if I agree with you that Ford Wheaton had a chance to wrap up, because as I went into step motion on the play, when he was at the point of a potential tackle, he only had one arm free. In fact, I almost thought that the Raven might have hooked the other arm. But I don't want to go there, because that's going to sound like sour. So I'm just going to say that I think the Ravens did a good job creating the lane.
And I will say, I think for the most part this season, Bryce Ford Wheaton has played, at least pretty
He's done
well
a good job
on kickoff and punt coverage.
He definitely has played well. I was just like, all right, so 2 more things and that's it. I wish our cornerbacks will turn around a little bit more when they're running with a receiver. Because if the receiver's head is towards the quarterback, your head should be towards the quarterback too, just in case the ball's coming. Because sometimes I feel if you turn around, you can either smack the ball or intercept it, but you guys don't turn around. And one more thing, if out of all, I feel we didn't have a bad team this season. I just feel we shot ourselves in the foot. So this is my last question for you guys, and I'll take it off there. If we didn't shoot ourselves in the foot so much this whole season, what do you think our record would be? Paul, guys, thank you so much, and I'll be listening.
All right, appreciate the call. Thank you so much, and
Thanks,
stay with the program. Look, I've said this many times before, 4 or 5 charity games that this team just gave away. They'd be a heck of a lot closer to 500, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean,
but what good is that going to do? Yeah, what good is that going to do?
Obviously, if the Giants didn't make some of those mistakes, their record would be a little bit better than 2-12. But I mean, shoulda, coulda, woulda.
If hypotheticals could get you in the playoffs, I'd be happy to talk about them. But they're not going to help us right now.
Yeah, and then just the other point Rob made real quick about the corners. I will say, of the corners that played yesterday, because again, the Giants were down Deonte Banks, Cordell Flott, Drew Phillips. Adoree Jackson, I thought played, again, it wasn't a perfect game, but I thought he played pretty well.
Strip and recovery on the first drive.
Yes, he had the strip of Lamar Jackson, which he recovered. I thought he was okay in coverage. Obviously not every play, but there were a few. As we said with Belton, he'd want back. But overall, I thought he played okay. The other corners that were out there, Greg Stroman, Art Green, I believe those are the other primary 2. Those are guys that have been on the practice squad this year for most of the season.
Like I
that
said,
obviously got thrust into bigger roles due to some of these recent injuries.
The team was badly shorthanded.
So while I understand what he was saying, I would just say that I think part of it was just due to the lack of experience for some of the guys that were out there yesterday, because they were, again, just very shorthanded.
Folks, just as a quick reminder, there is another home game coming up against the Indianapolis Colts. We hope to know by the end of the day, and certainly we'd have to know by tomorrow, the time and the date of that game.
Yes, I believe.
Has that come out yet today? They're hoping to get it by today.
I think the expectation is that it will be announced tomorrow. I think they're probably waiting to see how the games tonight go and see if that changes anything.
So just want to remind you that, again, if you're at all interested in coming out to the stadium, go to the Giants website, and you can check out the ticket packages there. And if you still want to come out and see the final game against the Indianapolis Colts, you can do that. You can also go and check out Giants highlights on the Giants TV app. It's on Apple TV, Roku, all of your favorite internet platforms. And, of course, the Giants Huddle, as always. Check it out later in the week. There'll be a preview of the game, a couple of long-form interviews, and some really good stuff. The Giants Huddle is on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Anything from Dan or the rest of the Dable press conference that we should get out there?
No, it seems like just Tommy being in the concussion protocol and some somewhat general praise towards Tim Boyle seems to be the only things that were really discussed, or at least tweeted out by Dan and even some of the beats.
It's good that nobody else got hurt. I mean, at one point, Wan'Dale Robinson was pulled off the field because they wanted to check him for a concussion in the tent as well. Yeah. But I saw him talking after the game in the locker room. He seemed to be fine.
Malik got stepped on at one point. That for a second,
on his foot, that was nasty.
Yeah, made me hold my breath. But I think he missed one play and then was right back out there. So good to see.
All right. Well, hey. Again, when you're looking for positives, those things are positives. We go back to the phones, and line 1, Coach Marvin is back on the program. See, it's a new week, Coach Marvin, so you can come back and on the phones again. How you doing?
I'm okay, Paul. How you doing, man?
All right. Did I summarize kind of what we agreed to last week correctly?
You did it correctly. First, I'd like to thank Rich. 42 years. I did 6 years in the military. He did 42.
Coach Marvin, we did not know that, I don't believe. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I think I said that before, but that was a long time ago, Pat. I mean, Paul, when I mentioned that.
Okay.
Well,
I could still say thank you anyway, because thanks should never be forgotten for anyone who serves.
Oh, no. I appreciate it. And as I said before, I took that oath 4 times in my lifetime, twice in the military and twice in Department of Justice. So to hear Rich, he did 42. I appreciate him. And I thank him for the kind words, saying that he did like hearing me speak about some of the things that are going on. But you were right, Paul. We didn't say all of them were good. We just used the word. I didn't want to just point out or put a number on it. I just said they have some good players. And I would think the word some was pretty much where I was going, that all of them are not good. Every team has holes and don't have all-stars at every position. So we're no different than those teams. And you were right. We were talking about that we drafted some really good players, but we haven't drafted those Pro Bowl players or those game changers that a team needs. All those teams need. If you look at the top teams, they got 1, 2, or 3 of those types of guys.
Yeah.
And we don't really have anyone to match up with those teams that have those kind of players. So it wasn't surprising to see what happened Sunday. I anticipated that. I anticipated that the 16 and a half points was low for what I was thinking. I was thinking somewhere around 20, 21 points that they'll lose by. But yeah, I mean, we're in a transition, and people misunderstanding the whole thing. I'm listening to it. It's everywhere. The noise is everywhere. Everybody got something bad to say. Fire this person. Clean house. Look, it's not helping at all to me. Because when I look at the team, you have to look at the team and can't say all is bad, because all is not bad. You're not looking at the full pictures. You're looking at the record. You're looking at sometimes a score. In some cases, the performances haven't been that great this year. But we didn't play with much, especially yesterday. There's a lot of guys out there for the first time, and that's all you can play with, and hope that Baltimore makes some mistakes to keep you in the game. And that was the only way they were going to stay in that game, if Baltimore just played horrible. Penalties, turnovers, and let us stay in the game.
Coach Marvin, you as someone who's been on the sideline for many years, you know better than anybody that as you go deeper into the season and you have to go deeper and deeper into your depth chart, it becomes harder and harder to try to rise above the fray.
Yeah, it does. And I did 12 years. I did 12 years total, and 7 of those years we were in the championship game. Or 5 of them we won. And then the others, I was in the semifinals in 2 of them. But there was a season I didn't have the team I thought I had. I was hoping that we would be. And I went through that where sometimes, as I used to say, we're so overmatched, I can't even help them. No matter what I call, I can't help them. Because the effort wasn't there, the talent wasn't there, and you're almost hopeless. And I understand that feeling that Dable is going through. Everybody says, "Oh, fire him," and they're just hitting that nail with the hammer. This guy, I could see it in his body language. I've been there for only 1 year, but I've been there, and it's a horrible, horrible feeling. And when he goes home, I can just imagine how hurt he is. I could see when he was standing on the podium yesterday, how hurt he was. Everybody asking these questions, and it's killing him because he doesn't have the resources to answer those questions. We don't have the talent right now to do it, but they're building that way. You were talking about Neil. They got to try to build that way. And sometimes if you hit 1 or 2 players on that draft, it can change the team. We've seen it done. We've seen it happen with the Houston Texans. We've seen it happen with the Commanders. Kansas City was good, but look what they turned into with 1 hit. Every team, you look at Philadelphia, that organization kind of builds. I would like to get somebody out of their administration. I love bringing people out of there because they form a really good administration, but the team is built so good that they can take flies on draft picks.
Coach, you don't even have to go that far. Bill Parcells was 3-12-1 his rookie season as a head coach in '83, and the team was ravaged with over 24 guys on the injured reserve list. They were decimated. And in '84, he comes back in his second year as head coach and leads the Giants not only to the playoffs, but they get a win.
Right.
I mean,
they went through
3-12-1. Think about that. That's pretty much where they're at now.
Right. And then that one hit, Lawrence comes in and changes the whole thing.
Actually, what really changed for Bill that year is that he installed Phil Simms as the starting quarterback after he made a mistake in '83. That's what really made the change right there.
True. But Phil was there already. And
yes,
Phil
he was.
Had gotten hurt, and now he's healthy. Now they can get the offense going.
Yep.
And stuff. But with Lawrence on there, that team would stay competitive.
No doubt.
Even if they didn't have all superstars on that team. They didn't have all Hall of Famers on that team. But they had some really good players, and they had, like you would say, Paul, game changers or headache players. They had them too, and that's what they have to get. Neighbors can be one of those, but he needs help. And I said it before. We talked about this Friday. There's two positions that makes those changes happen quickly: quarterback on the offense, edge rusher on the defense.
Yep.
And again, thank you, Paul. You were right. That's exactly how the conversation went the way you said it. So,
Coach, I appreciate you. Can we get one more call in here before we close out the show?
To get off. Yes, you can.
Thanks, Coach. Have a good one. Appreciate the call as always,
Coach.
I don't know. Were you on when we had Coach Marvin on last week? Were you with that show?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so what I love about Coach Marvin is because he was involved in the fray in athletics, obviously military as well, he understands the mentality and the emotion and how you have to separate that stuff a lot of times. The last thing in the world that you can do in the arena of competition is to allow negative emotions to impact your logic. That's the last thing in the world you can do, and that's what I love about talking to Coach Marvin all the time. He's able to keep that out of it.
Yeah, I agree. Good to see.
201-939-4513 is our phone number. I see there's one. Oh, of course. You had to know he was going to get in. Len from Maryland. As soon as Pearson gets done with his greetings, we're going to get Len up on the phone because, after all, Len's another one of our very regular callers. And we know that he was watching the game yesterday and was probably, let's just say a little bit down. Len, how you doing today?
Long ride home, Paul.
I get you. Oh, you came up for the game.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Hey, it's raining today. At least you had a dry road to go back to home.
Well, yeah, I did. And, I was able to do it in one day. I had my son-in-law with me, so we shared the driving. So
okay.
I'm getting to a point now where I can't do both ways in one day. So
I got you.
I need another driver. If I stay overnight, it's different. But, yeah. So, hey, look, I'm on a list of, Giants' best customers, and I'm a disappointed customer. I want wins, Paul. I want wins. I don't want excuses.
Well, Len, you had to be realistic going into this game, knowing that they had, a half of barrel of apples going in. It was not going to be easy.
Yeah, but let me tell you this about myself, and I've never been a player at that level. Understand? But I think I have the same mindset, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have gone if I didn't think we were going to win, right? And there were a lot of people. There were a lot of people who fell into that category. As you know, there were a lot of empty seats. Forget the Ravens fans. I ran into them at rest stops on the Jersey Turnpike all the way up yesterday. I mean, they were a happy bunch. Had their vestments on in the parking lot, and I exchanged pleasantries with them nicely. We had some nice conversations, but they're a happy group of people, and rightly so. It's a you got to win game. You said it best. You said it best most recently, and Matt was right in on this. Horribly on demand, terribly on demand. I think you didn't use horribly. You said terribly on demand. For sure. I mean, we couldn't compete. And as Coach Marvin said, looking at Coach yesterday, I think for the first time I felt sorry for him yesterday. I felt sorry for him during that press conference. It was the shortest introductory part of a post-game presser that he's ever had. I mean, it was 2 sentences. He moved on. Joe Judge would have turned it into a 50-minute lecture, but there was nothing much to say. And I thought, well, they kept pressing, and the only answer, and it was the right answer. It was the right answer by the guy. Prepare, control what you can control. How many times did he say that yesterday, Matt, in that press conference?
A lot.
He must have said that 6 times. It's gotten to that point. We need better players. But when the season's over, a win is going to take a lot of pressure off, guys. We can't go 0-9 at home. We can't lose 11 in a row. You're talking about 100-year records now. Something's got to happen, or there's going to be penalties. People are going to lose their jobs. The players out there now that we've got, they're auditioning for invitations. We're in a situation now where these guys are actually playing in hoping to get an invitation back. It's gotten that bad. We have some good players.
Every player's on that same situation, to be honest with you, Len. No matter if you're a winning team or a losing team, the game is a what have you done for me lately situation. So every player, there are even players on the Ravens yesterday who are playing to make sure that they're wanted and come back on that team next year.
There are some guys.
That goes for everybody.
There are some guys we know are coming back, Paul.
Well, sure.
Let me give you an example.
But it is a what have you done for me lately game. It honestly is.
All right, yes. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. We picked up a guy 10 days ago. I think he was on Seattle's practice squad, or Seattle cut him, D. Williams.
The return man.
Kick returner.
Yeah, he got into the second half.
Gave him a 3-year contract. Okay? He's out there standing next to Marset, who doesn't have a contract next year.
Smith Marset. Yeah.
Yeah, who does not have a contract next year. Okay?
Yeah. Who, by the way, I think he's done a pretty good job on his returns. I like Smith Marset.
Me too.
You know what? Not bad. And you know what? I his punt returns, and I pointed out to somebody yesterday, he keeps his feet under him. He's got great form on punt returns. And, of course, he returned one that got called back for a touchdown. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he knows what he's doing out there.
I think so.
But if you signed a guy to a 3-year contract who's a returner, and there's another guy who doesn't have a contract next year, that guy's auditioning. And you notice where Baltimore didn't want to fool with Williams. I don't know how good he's going to be, Paul, but they didn't want to fool with Williams. Mm-hmm. All of their kickoffs went to Marseille.
Okay.
I don't think they felt threatened. So that's the kind of situation where I'm talking about. How many jobs is Eric Gray going to lose in his career with the Giants? Okay, he lost the punt return job. He lost the kickoff return job yesterday to Williams. He lost the backup running back job. How many jobs can Eric Gray lose? Is he auditioning for? Those are the kinds of guys we got on this team, Paulie. It's a tough situation. One more point, if I may, and thank you for keeping me on. I appreciate it. And by the way, I'll be back at the next game. I'm not quitting.
Good for you, Len.
I'm not giving up these. I'm not giving up these tickets. It's in my blood. I'm with it.
I understand.
I'm with them all the way. I'm with them all the way. But I'm frustrated and disappointed. But the other point I wanted to make, and it's come up a couple of times. I'm all for. I'm thinking positive about Evan. I want to think positive about Evan, but you got to admit, 7th round pick. You're expecting more at this point. I know all the injuries, but even the development process on a 7th round pick that every team in the league had in the top 10, you would expect him to be a little further along. Even though he has some bumps and bruises, and I'm really hoping
more than bumps and bruises. He's had surgeries.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. But and one more narrative that I just want to put out there that I just can't buy into, and it seems to be prevalent. Paulie, I'm not charging you with this. Believe me, I just want to say I think you fall into this category sometimes. Yeah, it's a bad roster, but it's better than it was 3 years ago under Joe Judge.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting better. I don't buy into that, Paulie.
Okay.
I don't buy into that.
One thing I can tell you is that it is a younger team on the whole.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's open for debate. There's a lot more upside with this team than the one that was 3 years ago. Now, will the ultimate result be there? Will these guys all fulfill, or at least will most of them fulfill their potential and show their upside? Maybe they won't. And if that does not happen, then the analysis or the opinion will fall by the wayside. But until we get another year under our belts with a bunch of those young players who are continuing to progress, I'm not giving up on that. I'm not.
Yeah. Okay. Let me throw some quick names out to you.
Real fast, because we got to go, Len. I've already let you go a little bit long.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Hamilton, Humphreys, Roquan Smith, Pierce at nose tackle. The other big lineman, defensive lineman, whose name I can't recall, Ronnie Stanley, Linderbaum at center, the running back, and Lamar. All at least top 10 in their position groups. That's the types of players we have to get within our. They got to be top 10 players in the position groups. We got too many 35 to 53-year guys on this roster. Hey, thanks for keeping it.
All right,
Let's
Len.
go, Giants. Thanks.
Be good.
Thanks, Len.
Any comeback on that at all?
Well, there's a few things I just want to.
All right, real fast. Let's do it. I want to give you a chance.
Len brought up, D. Williams and the fact that he has a 3-year contract. He signed a 3-year deal as an undrafted free agent, which undrafted free agents sometimes get. It is not guaranteed. So just the fact that he has 2 more years on his deal does not guarantee that he will be back.
Right.
The Giants can release him after the season with no cap hit, dead cap whatsoever. So just because he's on a 3-year deal does not necessarily mean that he will be back.
I think his point
years.
was, though, that they clearly have some interest in him. It's not just
of course
casual.
it's a you take a flyer on a guy,
and that's fair. But yes, you do have to understand non-guaranteed contracts are a heck of a lot different. So I think both of you have a little bit of a point.
And then just the other point about Evan Neal. I mean, Evan Neal was the second offensive tackle taken in the draft that year. The other one, Eka Mikwanu, who the Panthers ended up taking in between the Giants' 2 picks.
I was a huge fan of Mikwanu.
Is first of all has been, I would say, a pretty big disappointment over the first.
I don't think there's any doubt
seasons.
about that.
And just yesterday had one of the worst performances of any offensive tackle of the entire season. Pass block win rate of 65%, which is the lowest any tackle has had through the first 15 weeks of the season. So again, criticize Evan, for whatever it is you want to do for the last couple of years. But the other top option in the draft has frankly been at the same level, if not, I'm not going to say one better or worse, but at the very least, Evan, finally healthy, has shown signs of improvement this year. Well, it looks like Ekwonu, the other top tackle, might be trending the other way. So those are just 2 quick little things I just wanted to sort of clarify.
Absolutely fair. That's why I wanted to make sure we got you in before the time ran out. That'll do it for this edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, folks. We are here every weekday from 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time till 1:30. We're live. And then, of course, you can always catch an archive of this show as part of your podcast networks, favorite podcast networks everywhere, and at giants.com/podcasts. For Matt Citak, I'm Paul Dottino. I almost forgot who I was, believe it or not. And that's just the way it's kind of been this year. That's all for Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. We will see you next time.